Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Theogenic Esquire podcast and YouTube channel. Very grateful to be back today. As many know, I took, about a 2-day break. I did publish a video yesterday about the Epstein files, something that will be an ongoing subject of discussion here on this channel. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Back today. Thank you for everyone who's showing up today and supporting. Thank you for everyone who in the comments last night and through the other days have shown your support. Very much appreciated. As most are aware, I do have what you consider a full-time law practice. Even though I do work from home solo, I still have quite a bit of duties on that end. And so I'm trying to figure out the balance, I guess, between the channel and that. And so thank y'all for being patient and accommodating while I do get it figured out. It sucks in a way because I had been working, 12, 16-hour days for almost 2 years straight. And then I had maybe a 4 to 5 month hiatus over the last 4 or 5 months where I actually got to chill out a little bit. And, I've been watching a lot of YouTube, stuff like that, getting, a lot of the stuff I'm talking about now. I was, looking into during this time. And so realizing now that I'm probably going to be going back to the 12 to 16-hour days, it's just something mentally to get prepared for, but I am prepared and I am committed. So again, thank y'all very much. I'm really enjoying this. And it seems like my subscribers are really getting a lot from it. So we'll keep it going. Today, I'm going to do a detailed update on Tyler Robinson's last hearing, which was Tuesday. I'm going to talk about, my thoughts, reflections on the actual proceeding. And then we're going to be talking about some of the motion practice that's going on kind of behind the scenes a little bit. We'll be touching on a bit of what Barron talked about in his live stream last night, because there were some bombs information-wise with the TR case that was dropped. And so we will address that, give appropriate credit to the investigators who were able to finagle some of this information. So yeah. And then then we'll go into the motion practice. I'll talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit today about, this push by Tyler Robinson's defense team to basically exclude the media and keep more or less everything going on within this proceeding private. And so obviously that's an issue, and we'll discuss it. And, good thing is that the court has allowed the media to, I guess, come into the case as a, I won't say uninterested, but a third party who's obviously not being prosecuted, but is allowing the media to make motions and stick up for our right to be able to have access to full and open court proceedings. So yay. And I don't know if I said this, but I'll also touch a little bit, and I'll do this at the end, but we're going to touch a little bit on the Epstein files. I had a few more things I wanted to say about the release, and, we'll be doing much deeper dives. There's just some facial things with this most recent release that are just, in my view, so terrible. And I couldn't sit up here long enough every day to harp on it because it's that bad. And from the comments, I can tell a lot of y'all are already seeing this. I hate that we're even up here discussing it, but that's where we're at. And at this juncture, the best thing to do is just keep it in the forefront of everybody's mind, because the minute that this goes into the back burner or on, gets lost out of all the media, clocks, it's over with. It's over with for us. So we're going to stay committed to that. We're going to talk about it at the end. But again, we're going to initially go right into the Tyler Robinson hearing. And so let's see. To that end, I want to start with the information actually that Barron discussed in his live stream last night. I don't know if any of y'all were able to catch his live stream. It was good. There was some, again, he dropped some pretty bombshell information. I'm fixing to talk about it that sheds a lot of light on the, we can assume the true facts behind the case, and also sheds a little bit of light on some, a discussion that we had about a week or so ago on Brian Minton's coverage of the Tyler Robinson matter. And so we'll discuss that too. So what did Barron release, or what was it last night that I consider the bomb that he dropped? Well, the creators, Billy and Brandy, I wish I had a link to their page right now, but anyways, Billy and Brandy are also content creators in kind of this sphere that I've been working in, Barron's been working in, who've been doing incredible coverage. They've actually been, getting off the couch and going out to Utah to these court proceedings to sit in and watch them, interview various witnesses, to which they seemingly have had some success. And through them, we're able to have a little bit more light shed on really what was going on, particularly with Lance Twiggs and Tyler Robinson. And so at the outset, one of the things that they mentioned was that I think it was Tyler Robinson's family actually told them, in their opinion, maybe 2% of the information that we've been fed regarding Tyler Robinson and Lance Twiggs is actually accurate. And so, we can make of that what we will. When someone says 2%, well, what 2%? The 2% that they're saying could be true, could be the most material. So, but anyways, I think that does kind of give us an idea of at least the fact that, to the extent that the government, the feds, and the have been pushing some kind of complete narrative, well, I think if they're saying only about 2% of that is actually true, well, that can give us an indication of really what's going on here. And I think it sheds some light again on Brian Enton's interview with particularly the lady with the blacked out face who claimed to be Lance Twiggs' aunt. More on that in just a second. According to Brandy and Billy, per Barron's live stream, Tyler Robinson's family members who they spoke to. And so I'll say this too, is that Barron didn't establish last night. And I think it's because Brandy and Billy, are saving a lot of this for when they present the evidence. And so let me say now, please go follow their channel and wait. Apparently they're going to have incoming a full episode and presentation on this evidence that they were able to come across during their trip to Utah. So yeah, please check them out. What I'm saying is coming third, fourth party through Barron. And so, please go to primary source whenever they publish this. That would be great. But yeah, so apparently the family did not think that Tyler Robinson was even really capable of this act. My impression last night from Barron's live stream was essentially that, kind of as I've been thinking, I think he relayed that he'd also been thinking too, that, sure, Lance Twiggs and Tyler Robinson might have been involved some marginal degree, but even then were likely duped or tricked into, having their participation, noted within this whole deal. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Right. And so, with that information, like were they duped, stuff like that, it really highlights why, how do we figure out whether this is true or not? Well, all we can really do right now is kind of see how his defense plays their hand, right? To give us some indication of what he's actually up front and center, admitting to, if he's admitting to anything. So again, we're still left kind of in the dark, right? And his defense team, as we'll talk in a little bit, isn't trying to help that situation out. They're actually trying to have this whole proceeding as private and out of the public eye as possible. But we'll go into that in a minute. Now, one other thing that apparently Brandy and Billy were able to establish, and I think maybe they talked to an actual, or like maybe a closer family member of Lance Twiggs, but basically they outed the lady who Brian Enton interviewed. According to this source, that person is like third or fourth degree or further of a relative to Lance Twiggs. And I think Barron said last night that the idea was that this person had maybe only talked to Lance Twiggs 3 or 4 times, like in total. So that was very interesting. And along those lines, Barron last night was kind of talking about Brian Enton and said, hey, I don't know if Brian Enton really did his full homework or did his job appropriately in this instance. And those who've been with me know that probably about a week or so ago, when we were talking about the text messages, right? We talked about Brian Enton's interviews, both with the lady with the blacked out face and the former FBI agent that he interviewed. Again, and this is not a comment on Brian Enton's total work. And just like many people, my subscribers kind of fall on both ends of whether they like Brian Enton or not. So, but anyways, I'm not here to judge Brian Enton's work in total. However, I kind of agree with Barron, as I expressed last week, that he dropped the ball here in regards to firming up exactly what degree of relation that this lady had to Lance Twiggs, apparently. And again, let me highlight all this with that, not that Brandy and Billy are not believable or coming through Barron, but just understand kind of the degrees where this information is coming from here. So I'm just kind of looking at it in that light. But yeah, I mean, Brian Enton's interview seemed to certainly suggest that that lady was a degree of relation and close enough where she had been in at least some type of substantial contact with Twiggs, even to the point to where she supposedly confirmed, right, that that's how, these gamers speak to each other, which just struck me as completely odd. One, because I don't believe that's how they speak to each other. And two, how would she know? Is she looking at their messages on their phone? It was really weird for me. But with that being said, we have to kind of take a step back. Now, I think Brian Enton's fumble there was because the larger kind of news outlet had lined that up for him, apparently. So possibly, the reason why he might not have done as much in-depth research on that particular individual is because he was kind of just taking the word of this large news organization that's hiring him to do the interview. And of course, that's his prerogative to do so. But at the same time, he came with that second interview with FBI agent. And at the beginning of that video, he talked about, the fact that he had done his homework and felt good about, the degree of relation there. And maybe he still does. But, based upon what Barron mentioned last night from Brandy and Billy, I don't know if I would have felt that comfortable. And certainly now that I'm aware of this information, it most definitely changes the way in which I kind of view it, although I already thought it was pretty skeptical. But obviously now it's more like, hey, this seems like this was probably intentional then, meaning that somebody, something, some force, in my opinion, my perspective, put that out there. And as we speculated, it is speculation. We speculated last time I discussed this matter that was to help try to authenticate these messages. It's seeming to me that more and more the federal government, or let's take it back, the state is thinking they might have to rely on those. Okay. And I'll get more probably into another episode of why exactly I think that is. But yeah, I think that the way some of the other evidence is seemingly starting to shake out, that these messages, which are in a way a kind of quasi confession of sorts, I guess you could say, in that it wasn't a statement given directly to police. It's in these text messages. It's not admissible per se as it is. So it's kind of like a quasi confession. And so, yeah, it seems to me that they are really wanting us to dig into those things and like it, because of the two Brian Enton interviews, both the aunt and then after that, the FBI agent, which, is funny too, right? Because as soon as the aunt was interviewed, so many people had issues with it. And so what did you know? Here comes another interview with the next FBI agent who can just, even though he felt they were a little suspicious, but, when we look at it, because Tyler seems to be expressing sociopathic tendencies, that seems to make it kind of real. And just some other things in there that again, just trying to force feed, I feel, these text messages into our system when we're not buying it, right? And so my impression is that the two Brian Enton interviews were really geared towards trying to further have us buying into those text messages, which to me just they look terrible. I don't know if indeed those are manufactured. I don't know who in their right mind looked at those and thought, oh yeah, they're definitely going to buy these. I'm not going to go there, but I think y'all get what I'm getting. Just no, not at all. So yeah, was that intentional misdirection? I think it was. Again, not on Brian Enton's part. I don't necessarily implicate Brian Enton in that per se, but obviously at least I know the Ant interview was done on part of a larger media organization, which again provides more basis in my mind, at least, to think that, yeah, this was some kind of intentional, I wouldn't call it necessarily misdirection, but, trying to further sell the narrative that it was very obvious that we weren't buying. And I'm trying to think when I'll say this. So in Barron's live stream last night, he did briefly discuss the court hearing on Tuesday, and noted that towards the end, the lady defense attorney, I apologize, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she was questioning one of the investigators, and through that questioning insinuated that the DNA evidence that they had was not like a single match to Tyler, but she insinuated in a question that there were actually 5 different DNAs on these items, or at least on one of these items of evidence that they've located and are getting tested. And so Barron stated his opinion last night that he thinks that she said that because that's true, that they actually have results from DNA with 5 people. And today I rewatched it just because what Barron said, I realized that like my opinion on it really mattered about, hearing her say it and the tone and context. And I agree with them 100%. I think that she brought that up, the way that she brought it up, the way that the question went, for sure, I feel is because there are testing analysis done, data that suggests that. And moreover, if it weren't, I think the prosecution would have objected to the question, because it sort of assumes, it would have assumed facts that aren't necessarily in evidence. So the fact that she said it with no objection makes me think that those facts are potentially, very good likely. There's a likelihood that very good likelihood that they are. So that's my take on that. So I agree with Barron that that's seemingly. Now, I will say this. Barron took that and said that it made him kind of get a little bit better opinion of Tyler's defense team. And I can say for me, it certainly helped. I still have some reservations, and we'll talk about that towards the end when we talk about, their position on open, transparent proceedings. But anyways, just wanted to point that out because Barron spoke about it, and it does. And that's another thing, it's pretty material to our outside investigation here about whether, there's 5 different DNAs on the screwdriver or the gun. I think those were the 2 items that the investigator on the stand the other day, like reference to with DNA, were like the screwdriver that apparently they found on the rooftop, and then the rifle that they allegedly found in that wooded area near the campus. So my thoughts on the hearing. So let me just explain. So for some of y'all who might be just a little bit confused on what exactly was going on and so this hearing was a continuation, right, of another same motion, same matter, same issues. But obviously this was a second. Sometimes hearings, especially evidentiary hearings, last more than one session. I just had one in federal court that went for 3 sessions. So these things happen. And so this was the second time around, but the motion is seeking to disqualify the prosecution, the Utah County Prosecutor's Office, because one of the lead DAs in the office, I think he might be second in command, but don't quote me on that, had a daughter, an adult child that was present at the scene of the incident. Apparently did not witness firsthand the actual, thing that happened, but was most definitely there. Part of it within a reasonable range of where Charlie was sitting at the time. I don't think this person had any video that they taken. And so a lot of the controversy about whether the Utah County prosecutor is, should be conflicted out. And what the fear is there is that, even though they represent the state and certainly should be partisan in the sense that they're representing the state, they still need to be objective in their decisions about, hey, like to seek the death penalty, things of this nature, right? And so having a daughter, one of the high ups of in the office, having a daughter, even an adult child at this event, the idea, the allegation from defense is that this could potentially cloud their judgment in a way that could affect the justice and the right to a fair trial in this case. And so that's really kind of the bulk of what they're going back and forth about. And really, I would say the heart of this last, proceeding on Tuesday was really the controversy was whether this adult child is going to be an essential or material witness for the prosecution, and particularly with regard to one of the enhancements that they have for being in the zone of danger, like endangering other people, right? And so the prosecution is obviously, the state is saying, no, yes, their daughter was there. Yes, she submitted a statement. We've spoken with her. She didn't take any video, apparently. I think the investigators picked up her backpack for her after the incident, and et cetera, et cetera. But because she's not an essential witness, and because we're not going to let her being there affect our judgment, we don't need to be off this case. Now, the defense obviously takes the other position for the reasons that I stated. And so today, or at the hearing on Tuesday, here was a controversy, is that during that hearing, whenever the investigator was questioned by the state, called them, they went through a bunch of still shots, and there were actually also video clips too that were part of the state's exhibits for the hearing. And what those were trying to do was establish for the court that the prosecution had tons of other evidence to establish these factors for both the underlying offense and these enhancements, in that they in no way, shape, or form were contingent, or it relied upon the testimony or evidence given or offered by the adult child. Okay. And so I just wanted to make note of those videos, because there was a State's Exhibit 4.1, which, to the best of my knowledge, was basically a video. Like the main angle that we've seen so many times over and over. And I know there's probably a few, but I think you get what I'm saying. The main kind of angle watching that whole thing go down. The state was wanting to present that in open court, again, as evidence that, hey, we got all this other evidence. We don't need the adult child. Now, before this hearing, the defense objected to it. So they objected to that one specific 4.1 video, okay, because they felt that it wasn't necessary, and that if it were, and just so we're clear, as far as the TV, or at least the proceeding I saw on one of the news stations on YouTube, they didn't even show any of the pictures or the videos. Now, the witness saw them, and they were offered or introduced. They were introduced into evidence, and the defense did not. They did not object to the entry of the still shot from that video showing, the scene. But before trial, or before this hearing, they did, object to the video being entered. And so I'm taking it, because the picture Exhibit 4 was entered without objection, that the state forewent trying to enter the whole video and was good with just the picture, and the defense was okay with that too. But just understand that there was a controversy before this hearing about whether the state was going to be able to introduce the video Exhibit 4.1, which they didn't. Maybe the witness reviewed it for a second to kind of refresh their recollection, but did not enter it. But that was an issue. But real quick now, I did want to bring up now, when the defense filed the motion to contest the, admitting that 4.1 exhibit, they filed a motion, and I want to read from it, because that motion, as I'm about to read to you, like I'll say that there's about 2 or 3 paragraphs in here that really, I feel, summarizes, or at least some decent iteration of what the defense's issue is, particularly with a lot of the outside media coverage, even the, what we're doing right now. So let me read that real quick. They say here, the impact of the alleged crime, or they were quoting a case, reaches deeply into the community. Residents are exposed to media information on almost a daily basis. As the highly biased traditional, local, and national media and Nouveau, Nouveau, international social media coverage of this case demonstrates, every in-court statement by attorneys representing the state, whether under oath or not, every statement by counsel for Mr. Robinson, and every observation and ruling by this court are under a microscope and are subject to microsurgery by journalists, bloggers, media experts, and others. Wow, you don't think that's because we don't have much else to go on? Might be. To make matters worse, those media entities, which now purport to refer to themselves as litigants in this prosecution, which is true, the judge has allowed them to, make an appearance and object, and with regards to the news coverage and things. But they say that, Yeah, to make matters worse, those media entities, which now purport to refer to themselves as litigants in this prosecution, in complete disregard of this court's admonition to the contrary, seek to ensure that every single pleading filed in and statement to this court is available for widespread public dissemination long before a neutral, untainted, and reliably unbiased jury is ever impaneled, undoubtedly undermining the ability of this court and the two litigants to do so to ensure that there's a fair trial. As the last two hearings demonstrate, repeated violations of this court's decorum order, which, not coincidentally, arise from improper, prohibited, telescopic views of Mr. Robinson and his counsel conferring at counsel table, and result in absurd but widely publicized opinions from putative lip readers and others who seek fame and fortune from interpreting facial expressions or the lack thereof, are brushed off by the media's in-court representatives as unintentional mistakes that will not be repeated again. This is, alas, the context in which the present hearing and the present objection must be viewed. So again, even though this wasn't directly aimed at a motion, and that we're also going to be talking about in a bit, directly implicating whether or not the media is going to be able to cover this, but this is just them painting the picture from their perspective for the court, why there's been issues with the media coverage, and in particular with in-court pictures and videos, mostly aimed at Tyler Robinson. And they're right? I think we've all seen it. There are lip readers and others who've done body language analysis, lip reading analysis. And again, here's my view of it is they not only do we have the right to see all that and them have the right to take those videos, take those pictures, and us have the right to interpret them. I certainly think we have that right. And, here's the deal in the first instance, right? Especially on this channel. It's like, because they have not released a lot of the other evidence that is extremely and highly material to really coming on square on all fours with what's going on in this case. That's why we're doing it. We don't have anything else to go on. We're just doing the best that we can to try to inform ourselves as citizens about what the hell is going on. You know what I mean? Simple as that. We're just trying to figure out what the hell is going on. For us, in our opinion, our perspective, a lot of stuff stinks. This does not look right for a whole host of reasons. And therefore, any little iota tidbit of information that we get is going to be analyzed to the fullest. Every word and every pleading, every statement, lip move, discussion. I don't know how the defense attorney walks confidently or not in a court. Like, all that's going to be looked at, to the nth degree. And I hate to tell the defense and the court, the prosecutors, people, but it seems to me that they better get used to this, because to the extent that the government, the courts, whoever it is, wants to withhold very precious and valuable information and evidence from us public about something as material and important as the assassination of Charlie Kirk, as it would be any other, higher profile political person or, someone who's very influential in our society, like, yeah, we want to know what's up. And we even have a whole group of people who don't even think that he's dead, right? And so, so in that environment, we're going to be looking to get anything we can. And these people who've donated their time and effort to do the lip reading and body movement, interpretation, God bless them. They're just trying to help. They're just trying to help. They probably have the same questions we do. They're also a member of this United States community. We're America first, and America, the government, the courts, they're here to serve us. And they're here to serve Mr. Robinson. And so I disagree with his counsel's position on all this. And to be quite honest with you, I really think their attorneys should be more concerned with the Fed slop narrative and like more concerned with Brian Hinton doing this interview from a person of what degree to Lansing? Like, what are these people saying? Like, that needs to be more of the concern. Actual case evidence and motions, should be of the least of their concerns. Like, we need that information to do our thing. Again, there are appropriate, in my opinion, procedural constitutional safeguards. It's called voir dire. where you get to interview jurors and get their take. What media have you formulated any opinions or conclusions yourself? I mean, as mainstream and widespread as this case is, I can just tell you from experience, in most cases, I mean, it's very rare you find a case where you pull in a whole panel of jurors and damn every one of them has seen all this coverage, formulated an opinion, and just absolutely no way to get a fair trial. Sure, you might have to do a more extended voir dire and get an even larger jury panel in order to pick those people out, but I most definitely believe it is possible and will continue to be possible. You know, unfortunately, some people aren't as hot to trot to look into these things and formulate opinions. Maybe they've seen it a couple times on the news here and there, but really haven't, formulate an opinion per se, other than to know that Tyler Robson's been accused. This is kind of generally what happened. So I think the defense's concern is really overblown. I mean, I understand in a sense where they're coming from a bit, but I just think that because they're not out in kind of our shoes looking in, that they have a jaded view of really what's going on here. And I think that their proposal for a remedy, complete, and then we'll get into this, but like exclusion of all media and have this in private, is the worst course of action to take. Us public, we have a very strong right to open court proceedings. Unfortunately, the only people that are in this case advocating for our positions, the media. It seems that both the defendant and the prosecution are pretty hell bent on trying to keep as much private as possible. And we'll sort a little bit of that out here in a bit, but we'll also be doing other episodes talking more about media access, because the judge said that, I think it's the 24th of this month, February, at 10 a.m. I assume it's going to be Mountain Time. There's going to be a ruling on the motion to disqualify the state prosecutor's office in this matter. And so apparently that's actually going to be online. I think it's through like the same platform where these filings are had. And a real side note, I agree with Barron 100%. The filing system in Utah is pretty terrible. I've had to spend more time just figuring out, like, okay, what motion is this? What does this refer to? It's gotten pretty, especially with the media as a third party in it. It's kind of difficult to look at these sheets of the docket report and really tell what the hell's going on. Federal courts, much easier. Motions that are attached to or refer to other motions or orders, like you reference it in the digital listing. And so when you're looking at an entry on the federal system, you can say, oh, okay, this is from the plaintiff. It's this response, and it links back to this motion by the defendant. Because here we have a lot of cross motions and replies and responses, and just looking at the thing, it's like kind of hard to really figure out what, and you have to pay for each thing, right? So you have to pay $1 for each document that you download. And so you want to try to make sure that you're making, the best, most appropriate decisions. And so, yeah, it's been a little tough, but I think I got the most material stuff for now anyways. And back to the February 24th, that is when judge will rule on whether the prosecutor's office needs to be excluded. And then at that time, he also stated that they would then figure out the next move in regards to the media issue. So I don't think he's also going to rule on the media issue that day. But apparently they're going to be setting the course for briefing, oral argument. I don't know if they're going to have an evidentiary hearing on that, but anyways, they're going to figure that out next. So I just want to make everyone aware of that. So let me keep going real quick on the hearing. Let's see. So one interesting thing, I think one of the most profound things that I kind of took from all of this last court hearing or proceeding was the process by which and the timing of which they decided to seek the death penalty. Now, most people here are aware that I believe it was the governor, like the day after announced, that they're going after the death penalty. Obviously, it's not the governor's call per se. It's really the prosecutor. But still, from the way that I took the actual DA's testimony in this hearing is that, that wasn't off base, that they had at least in some sense decided that they were going to do it. One thing that was brought out that is very abnormal is that they admitted on the stand to deciding about moving forward with the death penalty before they even knew who the suspect was. Okay. That's very strange. And that's really according to the defense, the way that they were questioning, and my take of their perspective on that is that's very strange. Normally, and again, I'm no death penalty attorney, but my impression is that normally facts about the actual alleged perpetrator should have some bearing or effect on whether the death penalty is ultimately sought, but that obviously wasn't here. And if we take what they were saying as true, is that they decided to proceed with the death penalty before they paved over the crime scene. So again, it's like they knew they were going to see the death penalty and paved over the crime scene. Now, I will say this, and this is going to be the investigator who testified at this hearing stated that, they did take some measurements and did some kind of testing or analysis at the crime scene. Now, whether that included a full forensic rundown and testing of the actual spot that's now paved over, I don't know, but it doesn't seem to me like that was included. But I'll just say that to say that I guess there could be some chance that they did at least take certain measurements and photographs and stuff like that, meaning that them paving it over might not be so prejudicial, just depending on what might be in their discovery file. But, without knowing that as an attorney, I'm really just kind of stuck here looking at a paved over crime scene, thinking that it stinks. And that this was done, just in my opinion, my perspective, intentionally to help obfuscate or destroy, to really figuring out what went on September 10th, 2025 at the UVU campus. So, so I'll say this is at the hearing, when they first started off, kind of the first matter that they went into were the media, and where was Judge going to let them position themselves, and what was he going to let them film, not film during this proceeding? And I think eventually what happened in here is that they just made them move to the back. I think that Judge now has a promise by them that there's going to be no like close-ups of the defense table or of Tyler Robinson, basically just trying to prevent them from feeding us video or images where we might be able to do lip reading or try to read into the situation that we so desperately want to know more information about, trying to prevent us from doing that. So the cameramen, from what I remember, is they were, placing them back. They still obviously filmed everything, stuff like that, but there was kind of this media back and forth at the beginning, and if we kind of take that and apply it to how we might think Judge is going to rule on the larger no media motion, it seems to me like he's still going to let the media in. I think he is. Of course, there might be some a little bit heavier restrictions or, points put on it than there is now, but I'm of the impression and opinion that Judge is going to let the media obviously cover it to the greatest extent, possible, including, actually being present for all proceedings in the trial. Maybe save and except for one or two proceedings that might be sensitive, to not, publicize, depending on who the witnesses are, stuff like that. But absent that, I think Judge is going to actually, let the media continue covering it. I just think we have a strong right to that, like I was saying, and Judge is kind of like all lawyer. Now, we also had the media, in a sense, representing our interest here. But in this case, in these types of situations with the media, it's really Judge in the court who's sticking up for our right to have, fully open and transparent court proceedings. Okay, let me keep going. Let's see. So in the defense said, and I just wanted to mention this, to them, the way that they're kind of phrasing or framing this, to the judge is that it's come to the point with all these videos and facial, lip reading and stuff, that Tyler's having to essentially choose between having a full and fair trial, or actually showing up for the proceedings. So insinuating that because of these, pictures and images that people are reading so much into, that he might choose to not even show up to these hearings because of that. And so the state or the defense wanted to paint it in that light, that say, hey, it's come to the point to where he might have to forego, showing up for his own defense, in order to escape all this prejudicial media, nonsense, according to them, that's going on. So I wanted to point that out. Let's see real quick. I'm going to say, so they did talk about the discovery. There's obviously some items of discovery that are still outstanding, and they reported on the progress of the discovery, but I'm going to cover that here in just a minute. Let me talk. I did want, the court noted Erica Kurtz's speedy trial notice that she put up. He did pay lip service to it, but my impression, well, he ended his soliloquy about it basically stating that Tyler Robinson's rights continue to be paramount, meaning that, he acknowledged Erica Kirk's got some right as victim representative to, speedy trial, but for him, the court, Tyler Robinson's rights are going to remain paramount. So I like to hear that. And the defense, actually, I don't know if some of y'all watched it, but at the very beginning, the defense had made a motion basically stating that the attorney general needed to conduct these hearings, that basically the Utah county's, the county attorney's office, they're not even supposed to be litigating this issue of whether they're conflicted or not. The judge took some statements and argument about that at the beginning, but ultimately ruled that no, they're fit to litigate, this issue of whether they're conflicted or not. And like I said, the death penalty decision, this is one thing that the defense really harped on, was the fact that this death penalty decision was more or less willy-nilly made. It was made very, very soon, not with the normal set of data that should have been according to them. And moreover, there was no documentation of that process. Like, I think normally there would have been maybe some memorandums, some more formal discussions, maybe some minutes, some meetings, really going through with the fine-tooth comb, all these considerations coming to that decision, but there was none of that. And I think the insinuation there by the defense, obviously, is that the reason why that is because this was just a knee-jerk reaction, emotional reaction towards the death penalty, because of the presence of the adult child. Okay. The district attorney stated that, yeah. And so they kept saying, so I will say is that the state, the prosecutor, they're standing firm that they believe that this is an appropriate case for the death penalty. And I agree. I disagree for many, many, many reasons. I don't think this is really anywhere near the death penalty. And I really do side with the defense on this. Was a really, really knee-jerk reaction. Now, my personal belief is that it wasn't so much involved with the adult child being there, but really just off the fact of who Charlie Kirk was and, the political affiliations of TPUSA to the administration, to the Republican Party, these things. In my opinion, that's really what caused the impetus for the death penalty to be, so quick. So, we'll see. I guess there will be more that maybe comes out about that as we move forward. Let's see. So I will say, so the adult child did close the court for that testimony. So we weren't able to see it. We didn't hear it. We don't know what their testimony was. I don't think that it was particularly long or important per se, but I just wanted to note that the adult child did testify. They did close it for that period of time. Let's see. Okay, so I explained the issue with the video, the 4.1, right? That main angle of the incident that we've seen on video. The prosecutor was saying, we have to introduce this to this hearing because we have to show judge that we have tons of other evidence outside this adult child to prove the elements that we need in order to firm our case up. Again, when it came to it, it seems that the video was not entered or admitted into evidence, that instead the prosecutor of the state and defense agreed that just still shots from those videos that they admitted would actually be admitted into evidence. So I just wanted to note that. Let's talk real quick, because they did go into the discovery, right? They talked about, what discovery's left, what does discovery look like moving forward. I will say that it does seem, from my impression, seeing the lawyers interact both amongst themselves and with the court, that they've been able to, at least in regards to discovery, it seems that both sides are getting along. Normally that's a good thing, but in this instance, is it? I just encourage you to ask yourself that question. Let's talk about the discovery, though. They say, 100% of what the state says, 100% of what they've actually received has either been, turned over or offered for examination to the defense. They said that they still have a ton of terabytes of data from phones and other digital items that have been acquired by law enforcement, but the state hasn't got their hands on it yet. They stated that collectively approximately 20 terabytes of 20 terabytes on a hard drive from law enforcement. And they're working to get that to the defense. I think that was in regard to the other digital evidence. They said that they did have, also law enforcement has 30 days of surveillance from the UVU campus, which apparently is like over 300 terabytes of data that, again, they're still waiting to acquire that from law enforcement, which, according to them, they will promptly turn over or make available to the defense. I think in the form of, removable external hard drive. They stated that there are a plethora of non-digital forensics sent to various labs across the U.S., right? And this kind of goes and harkens back to the 5 DNA that they found, apparently, just being revealed in some of the DNA tests. So apparently there's a lot of that they've sent to various labs. They said that they had summary reports from the testing, but they still need to acquire and turn over the underlying data and notes. And so back to, in the proceeding, the defense attorney was questioning the investigator and implied through one of the inquiries that there was actually 5 different DNA sets found on one of the pieces of evidence. So, very interesting. Absolutely very interesting to see how that pans or shakes out. So that's kind of going to wrap up my coverage of the hearing. I do have here, I wanted to talk about 2 more real quick, these motions that I was looking at. And one of them is the news media. So apparently there's a standing order by the court in this case. And the best way I can kind of summarize it for you is it's whenever the state or defense files a motion, they have the ability to classify it as basically public or private. When they're doing so, they have to obviously notify the other parties, in this case, not only the state or the defense, but also the news media. Now, unfortunately, the judge is only giving the news media, who's actually the one mostly objecting to these things, but the court only gave the news media 7 days to respond. And some of these First Amendment briefs and cases are very dense and constitutionally can get difficult. And so, 7 days to turn around and file an objection, memorandum, motion to these things can get pretty intense for these attorneys. And so what the news media is asking is that, and let me say, as opposed to 7 days for the news media, the standing order gave the state and Tyler Robinson 14 days to respond to if they're trying to make some of this stuff private. So what the news media was asking the court to basically reissue that order, redo that order, and give them a commensurate amount of time, 14 days, same as the state, same as Tyler Robinson. Obviously, all of that flies in the face of Mrs. Erica Kirk's, speedy trial notice, right? And so it'll be interesting to see how that ultimately pans out. To the best of my ability, I did not see an order on this motion to amend the standing order. So we'll keep an eye on that and see what judge rules along those lines. And it very well might come with the larger order on media access to the proceedings. Okay, so now I wanted to, and to be quite honest with you, I'm going to do probably in tomorrow's live stream a deeper dive on the reasoning and arguments of media access to this proceeding. However, I wanted to read a paragraph from the news media's motion. Actually, this is the news media's memorandum opposing motion to classify, basically to exclude cameras. Let's see. It was in opposition to defendant's motion to classify, motion to exclude still photographers, TV cameras, and microphones from the courtroom as private. Okay, and so and I'll look at this further, but I think this is the defense asking for an ongoing exclusion of these different media. What would you say? Photographs, TV camera, microphones, of these media implements. They're asking to exclude all of it, and basically make the courtroom a private proceeding. And so let me read real quick just the first paragraph from the media's response motion, because it's very, I don't know, it's very well said, and I think it rings very true here. It says, "No one trusts what happens in a secret criminal proceeding. Not those who support the prosecution, who wonder whether the case was properly presented. Not those who support the defense, who wonder whether the defendant's fair trial rights were respected. And not even dispassionate observers, who are deprived of their right to see how the judicial system works," something terribly important. "Along the way, the court's credibility is irreparably damaged, perceive accountability for alleged crimes is undermined, and public confidence in the result is diminished. This is why public judicial proceedings are a bedrock and axiomatic principle of our system of justice, not as a quirk of history, but as a founding tenet embodied in the Constitution. This latest iteration is what has become a serial drumbeat from the defense, demanding a secret prosecution is perhaps the most telling." So I just wanted to read that because it just sounded really good. And I'm going to, and to be quite honest, the reason why I'm not going to go into a full expose on this right now, one of the main reasons, is because I just need a little bit more time to look, and I have all the related filings from the state, from the defense, from the prosecution. Because when I present, I want to be able to tell you all the different angles, what the law is, and then, really draw upon all that in my analysis. So that's kind of where I'm at today on updating y'all with the Tyler Robinson, the court proceeding, getting kind of up to breast with some of these motions that are currently in play. Obviously, we're going to be waiting till the end of February to hear whether judge is going to disqualify the prosecution. And then that day also, too, according to judge, he's going to outline how we're going to proceed, or how they're going to proceed deciding on this media motion, which is going to be, outside of, guilt or innocence, death penalty or not. I think that this media motion is probably going to be one of the most important motions that's going to be heard in this case, because for something just tells me that in the event that this thing gets to go private, we're going to have a fast one, even faster one pulled on us. That's just my feeling about it. I'll just say that. My opinion, my feeling is that if that thing goes private, go ahead and get your wool socks and tie them around your eyes. Maybe put some duct tape around it too, because that's going to be about what you're going to be entitled to under that paradigm, right? So anyways, now ending up, I do want to just talk briefly about the Epstein files. I'll say it. I know y'all are like, oh, man up, Epstein files. I'm going to say that and Epstein files interchangeably. But one thing to talk about is regard to the redactions. Something about the redactions. I mean, it really gets to me about the redactions. Well, why is that? Because the redactions, and mostly as it relates to the fact that they just, I mean, this has to be intentional, y'all. There's no way, looking at all these errant redactions, that this was in any way a mistake. It seems like they intentionally released or, did not redact the name of a lot of the victims as was required by the law. And not just the law. I hope y'all understand this too, is that redacting names, personal information in court filings, things like the nature, like this release, it's common practice. And it's in especially in the federal courts, pretty much every federal district court has a specific rule about how they want redactions to be done. It's to be meticulously followed, and errors that aren't, clearly chalked up to just negligence, accidental, which those things do happen. I mean, it's treated very seriously. Treated very seriously. You know, the Department of Justice, in my opinion, the way I see it, they have a standard or duty of care to protect victims. You see what I mean? To protect victims and to notify the public of potential perpetrators. Like, and this is just a clear transgression, a very malicious transgression of that duty, I feel. And not only that, violative of the law, which mandates them to do that. And just to put it in perspective for y'all, just take a step back for a second and put yourself in the position of an adult female woman, or I think there's probably men too, unfortunately, in this, that, you were taken advantage of in the manner that we've been kind of unfortunately having to be privy to, in your very early adolescent teenage years. And, now you're wanting to try to get justice or just be protected. Just be protected. Like, maybe have the feeling that these people aren't going to come after you again or try to harm you, And the only outfit in this country that you really can lean on for that protection, nationwide at least, is the Department of Justice. Yet here we are, and the Department of Justice has chosen to side with the perpetrators and to hide their names, protect them, and oust the victims. Imagine being in that situation, that, how insecure you would feel and how terrible you'd feel. And in Washington, D.C., unfortunately, the only people I see, in my opinion, who give two shits is Massey and Ro Khanna. I'm not saying that there's not other politicians that care. I'm sorry if I meant, that severe, but the ones who give a shit enough to like really take a stand and like spend a lot of time in their day to try to rectify this are those two and their staff. And they are, like I said in my video yesterday, set to go over to the Department of Justice themselves and their staff and go personally start to audit this. Thank you. I mean, I'm so glad they're doing this because, the Tyler Robinson trial and getting justice there is super, super important. And I'm going to keep covering it as I have been, because of that. But let me tell you, this Epstein thing, E-teen thing is something we can't let go. We just cannot let this go, ladies and gentlemen. We have to insist on accountability. We have to insist on it, because if those people go free, for one, is there justice in this country? Well, the answer will for sure be no. Because not justice for one, not justice for all. Just terrible. Just terrible. I'm having to process it a little bit. Because I grew up in I've been on the streets a long time and stuff too. And I've just seen a lot of people go to prison for some pretty trivial stuff, man. Pretty trivial stuff. And the federal DOJ is really good about, in my opinion, sending people to evidence. It's called the drug laws. It's called mandatory minimums, and it's called, trapping college kids to lie about other people so that we can get another conviction. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. And so, just the amount of people who've gone to prison over the years for little or nothing. And here we are with, look, to say that there's enough evidence to warrant a hardcore, nonstop, maybe decades long investigation of this, it'd be an understatement. We don't see nothing. Instead, we see ousting the victims and obviously putting them at danger. What I will do over the next day or two is I'm going to do some recorded videos with these videos of the victim I was talking about, that of Trump, who actually came out way before he ever ran for president, victim, who was basically harassed and intimidated into dropping her lawsuit and claims against Trump. And so, seeing that and then seeing what's going on here, I see a pattern. I see a pattern of, if we out the victims and they get threatened enough, or hey, some of them aren't even with us anymore already. This will end up just going away. Just going away. Because hey, at the end of the day, that's right. If you don't have a victim, to show up in court and testify, it makes it that much harder of a case. And so, yeah, I really honestly think that has that thinking, that mindset, that strategy went into this latest file release. My opinion, my perspective, and it sickens me. It's terrible, my opinion. So yeah. Let's see. Let me make sure real quick, y'all. Let me just look through and make sure. One thing I wanted to mention, Clinton was supposed to be testifying, I think, at Congress today in one of the committees. I thought I had it live on YouTube earlier. I was really busy. So maybe I'm going to look into it and see if we can pull that up and see what Clinton, I think Bill Clinton was supposed to testify. I think at first they weren't. I'll look into that too. And there's but hey, look, here's the deal is that, in my opinion, I think Clinton probably was not doing right with them, right? Like, to the extent of his involvement, whatever. I'm not even going to speculate on that per se, other than to say I think Clinton was probably involved in some not right. Okay. And so for him to come and testify to Congress, at least showing up, even if he pleads his constitutional rights, he has a spine. He's at least being somewhat of a man about it. Because I tell you what, at this juncture, integrity is everything to me. It really is. It is. Integrity is everything to me. And so, and I've been saying this about TPUSA, even people who've done really bad, to come out and just admit it and be transparent. Again, not saying TPSA is like but I think you get my point. And, so I just want to bring that up just in the terms of integrity. I'm not trying to definitely not push up Bill Clinton or anything like that, but just, to the extent that he's having integrity to come and at least face some of the music. Yeah, he should be recognized for that. I do feel that. Yeah, because I think, unfortunately, administration, integrity, doing the right thing is a priority list from what I gather. So here we are. But hey, look, I will say this, the one silver lining that's kind of, because, I try to maintain a positive attitude, a mindset really about everything, but this situation's been really one of those having to dig kind of deep, but I do feel that we're coming together, both sides of the aisle. I think we're realizing that the whole notion of an aisle is really ridiculous, and that we're actually able to come together and rally around this. And it's some of the other issues I've been discussing. They all bleed into each other, right? And I'm going to say it again. I think that there's one foreign lobbying organization that really is the root of the issue. I think that if we're able to address that, a lot of the other stuff is going to work itself out. I feel, my opinion. And again, I'm going to do some more research on that and keep digging and stuff on it. Again, I've really just jumped in over the last 6 months or so, digging on these larger political issues, stuff like that. But I'm staying committed and will, report to you along the way. But I do see that as the main linchpin issue that needs to be addressed. That issue not being addressed has led to all the division, and all the division has led to these people getting away with the stuff that we're hearing about in the Epstein file release. See, it's the old okie dokie, and people say it all the time. And I think even me at times, it just goes in one and out the other, but it's true. The division is what keeps us down. It's what keeps us down. If we were united, and if we just had let's say we could just come together and have a 10 policy goal objective that we can agree on, and we could get some politicians in there to actually do it and have some integrity and not touch young kids and stuff, I think we could be badass. I think America would be very, very great again. but we have some growing pains and some healing that we need to do as a country. And it all starts at the personal level, y'all. You know what I mean? Really, we're part of a whole. And so, it really starts with us. I will say that it starts with me internally, healing my trauma and all those things that keep me in that anger frequency, pointing the finger at the other side, how different and crazy and bad they are. Let's deep inner healing to take place and get rid of that and take yourself out of that terrible negative frequency. Because that way we're going to be able to really address what's going on with this country. And so I'll get off my high horse. But I really just wanted to share that with y'all. Yeah, just we have been taught to project, deflect ego. We certainly have. Yeah, we certainly have. We are. And again, it's systemic. These problems that we see, even though we really look and identify and try to like put it on certain personalities, certain people, they're products of the environment that is our community, our nationwide community. You know what I mean? And so again, let's on top of seeking to hold others, third parties accountable, let's every day I wake up and just say, what can I do my part to help fix this situation? And sometimes maybe my behaviors, maybe it's the way I talk here or address stuff, right? So even though we have to point fingers and look at people and stuff like that, never keep holding ourselves accountable, right? And not saying we're doing anything wrong per se, but we all play a little part in a larger picture. And so I try to remain cognizant of that. So anyways, thank you, Susan. You're awesome. Let me go up here in the comments and I'll swipe through and see how many I can get through. Ooh, it's a lot. Thank y'all for supporting, man. Thank y'all for supporting, for real. I was thinking back last night, God bless Baron and his channel. He just came in at like this right perfect time. When the whole event happened and everyone at the very first was just super, super confused and just felt something wasn't right. And I'll never forget, I was watching Ian and he played Baron's videos where Baron was releasing all those Google searches, which were incredible. And I must admit, not that I would have any problem admitting it, but yeah, admitting that was incredible. That even, to be honest, those Google searches, I credit that with keeping me in this, keeping me committed to doing the investigation, doing, analysis and trying to ensure that there's not something funny going on. Because once I learned about those Google searches, I said, oh man, especially the ones from, across the water over there. But anyways, yeah, Baron came in at the right time with great information, great research, and boom, God bless him. I love it. And he's getting the good word out for sure. I'll probably have a bit, not tough or rough, but a bit longer way to go with my channel. So yeah, it's okay though. And to be honest, working hard, staying committed and, getting all my subscribers. Granted, Danks, Mr. Let Go. There's been some people who've supported me for sure, but it's over the last 2 weeks or so, it's been just me grinding on it. And man, I love it. Thank y'all. And so I think we're almost to 1K subscribers now. And what is it? Yeah. So I'll be able to do super chat stuff for too long. It's not that super important for me. It'll all come in due time. And just thank y'all for being here. Lizard, thank you for being here. As always, a longtime supporter. I grew up in a place called Richmond, Natal, in South Africa. Virgo, wow. I'm going to start saying y'all. Yeah, you can say y'all. Yeah, that means, yeah. That means you're from the swamps. Yeah, I did. I grew up in Northeast Texas. There's swamps there for sure. Let's see. A lot of y'all going back and forth. I think about like, why am I here? Let's see. Oh yeah, so that comment from Charlie Kirk about that he thought that he might be going to federal prison in the Arctic frost and stuff like that, which I mentioned Arctic frost in my episode about I think it's when I was going over the campaign finance violations and stuff like that. But yeah, it's like Charlie, again, I think, and I'm like everybody, a lot of other people. I've wanted to think the best about Charlie, even though, to be quite honest, like naturally, I wasn't really aligned with a lot of stuff he was saying and doing per se. Like, but I've always wanted. There's something about him is very. Something about him was encouraging to me. You know what I mean? Like, because I've always wanted to believe the best about him, and it's my opinion is that it came to that point, meaning that he didn't start out trying to do dirt or do things that would put him in a position where he would say, I might be going to federal prison if Trump doesn't win. But yeah, it's very interesting, right? And I think Danks did a good episode talking about that maybe yesterday. So yeah, go check that one out. Danks did a good one, and I'll be talking more about it, obviously within the context of other stuff that I got going. Tomorrow, I want to talk about TPUSA again, and I want to talk about some other angles or ideas that I have about potentially, looking into some potential accountability for, whatever wrongdoing or violations could have maybe occurred. So I had a really good kind of breakthrough and did some research. And so I got a whole other little better mapped avenue, might I say. And so we'll discuss it tomorrow. Let's see. I'm getting the vibe that Brian is normally a good journalist. I've heard like just the quality of his work, just watching the quality seems to be pretty good, for sure. And he's worked for larger news organizations. Maybe he still does. But there's people that come on both sides, Lizard. Some people are like, no, he's crazy and all this stuff. And then some people say, no, he's a good journalist. He's just kind of been misdirected here. I haven't seen anything to give me too poor of an opinion of him other than, yeah, I think he did slack on trying to verify the degree of relation of the Twigs Ant interview, in air quotes, with Ant. Let's see. Yeah, we need transparency all the way around in everything. Yeah. Yeah. Viewing court proceedings shouldn't be a fight like it has been. It should not. It really shouldn't, y'all. I'll say this is that if a court proceeding is going to be closed to the public, like it should be very apparent. There shouldn't have to be too deep of an analysis by the public, like protecting the identity of minors. Oh, well, the DOJ don't know about that, but protecting the identity of minor, something very, very, very important and that we hold sacred that would allow for us to feel good about foregoing our right to an open proceeding. The fact that we're having to sit here and really go back and forth at length and file all these motions and stuff, it just doesn't seem like it's I'm not going to say not legitimate. I mean, they obviously have the right to bring it up and assert it and all that stuff, but I just don't think that it's being asserted from a foundation of likely to win type deal, so yeah. DJT said lots of innocent people will be hurt if those Epstein files are released. Yeah, exactly. And you think, look, who do you think he was talking about? Like I know in all of our minds when we heard it, we probably thought, oh, he's definitely talking about his buddies and stuff like that. No, he's for real, but he's actually, in my opinion, talking about the victims. I honestly think this was something, again, intentional. It's sick. It really is. It's sick, man. That's all I could say. I don't know. If I were to have been working, even just working for that office during that, I would have had to go. I would have for sure had to go. Yeah. Yeah. Standing on principles and morals is very important to me, even when times are very, very hard. And that would have had to have been a time for me. Time to go. Is their filing system antiquated or is confusing intentionally? No, I don't think, I think it's just the system. I don't think it was orchestrated for this case. I think that's just the system. And as I'm sitting here talking shit about it, like the people who probably use it every day, it's probably really easy to them, like the federal is for me and probably Barron. But yeah, it's just confusing. It's just really hard to identify really, which party's filing it, And a lot of times, like I said, these motions will refer to one another. So it's like if I file a motion to exclude, state files a response, and then maybe I file a reply, and then maybe a cert response. And so it gets real tricky. And so normally, like in the federal, when it lists it, it'll have a link to every single motion or order or other filing to which it relates, to where it's easier to get the context of where's this particular motion, coming from. And it's just very much more difficult on their system. And hey, look, you have to pay $1 each time you look at a filing. So it very well could be that the reason why it's a little bit not as straightforward is so that way you get your dollar. That way they get their dollar. And look, it's okay. It's fine. I love y'all and I want to cover this to the greatest degree, but I'm not going to spend, I think there's like 340 or 50 filings or something. Y'all don't want to hear about all those. I don't want to pay for all those. And there's not stuff in every single one of those that we, particular for our purposes is super material. I'll represent to you that my job, and I've been doing this pretty much since I got an account, going on every few days and just looking and making sure that if I feel something's material or important, bringing it to you. So, to the extent that you feel confident in that, you're getting everything that's material, and, let them keep their difficult filing system. I get a lot of people talking about the mafia-like situation in Utah, the Mormon Mafia. So Adam Thomas, what's up, man? How you doing? I'm pretty sure Adam sent me an email. I will reply to you, brother. I will do an objective opinion on Enton in the comments on the stream. That's fine. Yeah, feel free. Y'all are free to express your opinion. I just, I haven't seen enough names in the Epstein files at all. And where are the indictments? Oh, I agree. I mean, exactly. I could go on for hours, but the redactions that they did were terrible. I hope that Massey and Rokana are able to finagle something, man. And it seems like the little bit that I caught with the hearing today in Congress, it seems like maybe they are creating an independent committee or task force to go do this with Kana and Massey. Let me look into that more, because I'm very, very, my interest in making sure that something appropriate is happening in the Epstein files every day is very, very, very strong. Oh, really disappointed Megyn Kelly's take on TR. I take it you've seen my videos too. Let's say, it's like, normally when I look at Megyn Kelly, she seems like she's got a really sweet demeanor and like seems to be otherwise a really good person, but like, and she's certainly entitled her opinion on everything in the Tyler Robinson matter. It's just something with the way that she's saying it, just to me reeks of maliciousness. And I don't know. I'm sorry that I can't put my finger exactly on it, but just something about the way that she always, asserts his guilt, asserts that he needs to die. Because that's basically what she's saying, is he needs to die. She wants to be there to see it. It's malicious and just strikes me as evil. I can't really view it or feel any other way about it. I'm trying my best not to let that jade my overall arching opinion about her. Okay. So that's really where I'm at today with Megyn Kelly, but I'm with you. I don't want to not like her or, avoid her or say she's terrible, but the way that she's stated these few times about his guilt and innocence has really rubbed me that way. Sorry. I can't help it. I'm surprised at the lack of response overall from the files. Yeah, UK politicians are coming under some heat too. Yeah, Prince Andrew, he sure as hell came under some heat. Let's see. Megan's in for the money in the image. I've never heard her say anything groundbreaking, just sails in the wind. And I'm also still looking, y'all, into the Farnsworth relative being part of the defense team. So stay tuned. And again, if y'all have anything on that, please email it to me. I did see like a post, or I've seen some stuff, just maybe this last proceeding is what prompted it. Is Tyler Robinson actually Jeffrey Epstein with massive plastic surgery? Woo! I should have put my tinfoil hat on before I read that one. But hey, as crazy as things are these days, I'm not going to say that that's completely out of the equation there, man. Oh, let's see. Sorry, I'm kind of through these quick today, y'all. I got to use the bathroom and do some other things. So, but anyways, let's see. Thank y'all for all the support too. Yeah, man. Like sharing, commenting, subscribing, all that. Thank you. And Greg, what was your first impression of the defense team? That's a good question. I think my first. So it's funny. It's funny. When I first started looking into the defense team, I was actually watching some Brian Enton interviews, and to be honest, it was actually interviews with other experienced death penalty lawyers, either people who are friends with some of his lawyers or in and around that community. And actually, I do think that he had one at least quick conversation with one of Tyler's defense lawyers. But at that time, they had not talked to any witnesses. They definitely hadn't reached out to any experts. It just seemed like they weren't really. My impression initially was that they were so laser focused on the death penalty that they weren't even going to put up any kind of real fight for guilt, innocence. Now, I will say that it does seem now that they are going to be putting up some kind of fight with guilt, innocence. So that's great. I love that. Whether they put up my vision of what the appropriate defense of it would be, I'm not gonna hate on them for that per se, but just depending on what the actual evidence in the file says, I will have some opinions and judgments on how they approach this. But again, we just don't know everything that they have in those files, and so it's hard to go way out on a limb and have any kind of real hardcore judgment per se on how they're conducting this, because it would just be short-sighted. Although I'll just say that I just don't feel real good about it right now. And it's a little bit better than my initial impression, but not much. Yeah, and again, and so many people, and I'm looking at Diaz family 4554's comment here. Yeah, just so many people feel like this is just gonna be a fully bully. I mean, it got a bunch of funny names, like I say, but pull the wool over our eyes and get on with your life type thing. And I hope that, one, I hope that's not what happens, but two, if it does, I hope that none of us, I know me, I hope none of us are satisfied with that. And, take all nonviolent means. Violence is never the answer. Take all nonviolent means to try to address that situation. And I thought about this yesterday, like what could be done if this all happens? Well, to the extent Judge Graff is ever up for, and I think that even though Utah judges are appointed for some, or maybe elected, there's something weird. But if Judge Graff ever comes up for some election, make damn sure that he doesn't go back on the bench. There's a lot of things you could do. Complain to potentially I'm not going to say that, but anyways, if we have to cross that bridge, we'll cross that bridge. But if that does happen, there's definitely some things that we could do. But I mean, the elected officials, who's the senators in Utah, who are the House members, all of them need to go. All of them need to go if that happens. In my opinion, it's inexcusable. And like Barron said last night, here it's kind of this unspoken thing that we know that, they killed JFK and Martin Luther King and RFK. And, it's kind of like we kind of accepted and we've kind of moved on, which fair enough. That's fine. But that does not mean that we have to keep putting up with this. No. It's not funny, because when you really get to think about when your government is out there killing people and that there's elements of the government who aren't elected and not under our control that are really the ones doing this evil, crazy stuff, that's an issue that needs to be addressed. And ultimately, right, we American people have been funding a lot of this stuff. And so obviously, if we have control of the purse strings, well, that might be the first place we want to look at rectifying this situation. So again, we'll just see how the cards fall. Thank you for the kind words, Lizard. Yep. I have to say my life was better before I started opening my eyes. Yeah, that's right. People will go through, they call it the dark night of the soul. Usually it's discussed in a spiritual context. People who have and I've seen, thousands of people go through these, but like you have a real deep, intense religious, mystical experience, and it completely throws your ontology, theology, everything just for a loop, and it sends people into a spiral, which is part of the spiritual process, right? So it's part of the process, this waking up, but there's an uncomfortable part of it. It's a gift, and ultimately grateful to be illuminated in that way, to be able to see these things as they are, but it's not pretty and it sucks. And it means that we have to now respond to a call of action. And so it's uncomfortable in that way. And yeah, it's a dark night of the soul. I think it's going to be a dark night of the soul for everybody who sees it. They don't like it, but otherwise they're uninvolved with politics, community activism, stuff like that, and the push to have to go get involved. It's going to be a dark night of the soul for a lot of people. But what needs to be done needs to be done. And the way I kind of look at it now too is I don't longer think about it with me, but it's the kids, children. What are we doing to our children? What kind of system are we going to be leaving to them? Obviously, there's been a lot of them who've already been traumatized very highly by the system that we currently have. And so let's try not to leave it, to hand it off that way to them. I feel good that we're going to hand them something where these things aren't happening with the apparent frequency and depth and intensity that they were all across the world. Unbelievable. Let's see. Sorry, I'm kind of just, what do you make of Clinton's giving evidence? Before I comment on that, Lizard, I think I talked about generally my thoughts of the thing that, I like that he's, to the extent that he shows up and is truthful, and, even if he asserts his right against self-incrimination, showing up shows that he does have a spine. I appreciate that. Just showing your face whenever, it's the Clintons. They could go hide up wherever they wanted to. Hell, they could probably fly into space if they wanted to and get away. So to have them show up, just that fact, I got to commend them, man, just for that. Okay, here we say, was Lisa Bloom the lawyer that Michael Cohen talked to when he reached out to silence Katie Johnson? That's a very good question. I'll look, but that Katie Johnson, if you're talking about the same one I'm thinking of, that's that girl, the woman who was the first one ever to come out and file a lawsuit against Trump and come forward way before he ever ran for president. And those are if that's the same girl we're thinking of, I'm going to play those videos at least from that. I don't know if it was a deposition or she just made a statement, but I won't play them for y'all. I think it's something that you definitely need to hear and at least give it a chance to see if it strikes you as credible or not. Yeah. Let's see. Hillary was tweeting, they are both ready to publicly testify. Well, I hope so. Again, hey, look, regardless of which side of the aisle you come off or, that you naturally tend towards, in a situation like this, as when you see so many rich and powerful people ducking and dodging and being, pretty obviously deceitful, gaslighting victims and stuff, for someone to actually show up and at least give a chance to give some testimony and stuff. I mean, again, I gotta honor it, so we'll see, but we'll see what they give, and I'll definitely be, discussing it. Appreciate y'all. Looks like I'm getting towards the end here. Okay. All right. So yeah, man. Man, thank y'all so much for coming today. We're about an hour and a half live stream. I'm gonna off here and go use the bathroom, eat some dinner, and start working on tomorrow's outline. But like I said, tomorrow it's going to be more primarily focused back onto the TPUSA thing. Looking at these different legal avenues for, potential accountability for them. Again, to the extent that there is found to be wrongdoing or illegal activity, right? I don't want to jump to any hardcore legal conclusions on that end, other than to say that there's been some pretty credible evidence, in my view, that that's some pretty deep wrongdoing there. So, but we're going to address that back tomorrow with an idea that I had, and see where it goes. See what y'all think about it, and we'll also be talking about the E-team files some more. I'll do some more digging and bring some more to you, and I will also talk more in depth about the news media motion in the TR trial, Tyler Robinson trial. So, thank y'all from the bottom of my heart. We're gonna keep pushing. But we're gonna do it boldly, bravely, with integrity, and see where we can get. I make the pledge. Scouts honor. Anyways, thank y'all. I love y'all. Much love and peace. And we will see you tomorrow. I'll be in the comments afterwards, so I'll respond to a lot of y'all. And thank y'all. Much love. Y'all have a good one.